Hey, what's going on, guys? Indypride here with Milk and Cookies Total War.
And the Prussian Prince as well. That was fast, wasn't it?
It was fast. It was great. There's no awkward pause there at all. Well played, sir.
Yay. So, this is the Silver Shield Tournament number 2. First one was won by...
Oi, oi, oi.
Pronounce his name.
Yeah, that's how I pronounce
him
it.
in the final.
Yeah.
But anyway, this tournament, there are 8 players. We have the 2 of us, obviously, who are facing each other in the first round. It's best of 1, by the way. I'm playing as Rome. He is Lusitani on this map, but there are some really weird rules.
There are some weird rules. You want to go over a little bit of them real quick?
Okay. So, we have to use minimum 40 units.
Yes.
That is correct. It's large army size. And, of course, artillery is banned, both fixed and field artillery. 40 minutes time limit, no fixed defenses. Battle realism is off. I don't even know what that does.
I think it gets rid of the HUD, and it means that you can't move your camera far away from your army. So that's the same in pretty much every tournament. I don't think I've ever played a battle realism tournament, although that might be interesting, to be honest.
I think Oivio hosted something like that. I don't know. I think.
Yeah, and then the other weird rule was that there was max 10 cavalry out of a 40-unit army, correct?
Yeah.
So it was, there were some weird rules, the biggest ones being that it was max 40 units and that you had to bring less, or 10 cavalry or less. So in this setup, Prussian Prince, he picked Rome, obviously a really strong infantry faction, and to counter it, I wanted to go Lusitani, because what I was expecting was, again, you have to bring 40 units, and you have a limited amount of funds. It's large funds on 40 units. So I was like, I think Prussian Prince is going to be bringing a pre-Marian army here, because...
I can't bring 40 armored legionaries.
You simply can't do that. They're very cost-effective for what they're able to do, but they're still relatively expensive. They're 10, 20 talents, something like that? 900. I don't remember exactly, but they're very cost effective, but they still cost a decent amount of money. So I was like, it's going to be a pre-Marian. I'm going to be seeing a Principe spam from Prussian Prince. Lusitani can beat pre-Marian Rome pretty handily. The veteran shield warrior is super cost effective unit. They will beat Principes 1v1, I believe, and then the Iberian swords will lose to Hastati 1v1, but that's not really a big issue because they can also throw their javelins, and they're a really good Peltas unit as well. So I brought Lusitani kind of expecting that. And one thing that Gamer Dudester, and actually I think we can hit play on 3, 2, 1, press play. One thing that Gamer Dudester said recently that I thought was really interesting, and I think is very much true with the Rome 2 metagame at the moment, is that in general, meta builds are extremely important, and faction matchups are super, super important. Maybe more so than micro. You can simply win a game at the beginning of the battle just by having an army setup that counters the other. So just like I decided to pick Lusitani to face pre-Marian Rome, if that had been the case, I think this would have been a super easy battle for me. Oh, maybe not super easy, because again, Prussian Prince is obviously a very good player, but it would have been certainly easier than matching up against a bunch of Armored Legionnaires or Avocati Cohort, which suddenly makes it a really hard matchup. So do you want to talk about, you did something that I praised you for with the levies here and your army setup. So explain what you did here and how that kind of counters what I brought.
Well, can't really praise me for this because it was really Duck's idea to bring lots of levies. He didn't say the exact number, he just said bring lots of levies, so I brought 10. Then I brought those armored legionaries at Hastati, just heat shields or to absorb the charge or to support the flanks where I have my cavalry. That's how I'm going to use them. Just really depends, reserves basically. Then I have 3 auxiliary cav on each flank. Auxiliary cav beats Scutari cav 1-on-1. I do see that you have Scutari spearmen on each flank, but the thing is that your Scutari spearmen, well, they might tip the cavalry battle in your favor. When Hastati arrived there, it's gonna be different.
Yeah, because Hastati, of course, are going to be beating spearmen 1v1. So what I think was so... honestly, I think it was kind of brilliant. It was super annoying, but whoever did it, whether it was you or Agony Duck that gave you the idea, The thing that makes this so ridiculous to face is that when he brings those 10 levies, it suddenly frees up a bunch of unit slots and a bunch of money for him to level up his legionnaires, basically. So instead of Principes, it's an Armored Legionnaire Corps, which simply Iberian Swords and Veteran Shield Warriors cannot deal with. I have 3 elite sword units. I have 3 Lusitani Nobles. These are the only guys in my army that can deal with any of his sword units in 1v1 combat. And I don't have a numbers advantage, because I have a numbers advantage in the melee engagement, but because we're forced to bring 40-man units, and elite tier swords like Armor Legionnaires and Evocati Cohort are going to be beating the majority of my swords, there is definitely a opportunity here for a chain route kind of thing. So I have to look at this conflict, this engagement very carefully, and I think where it's going to come down to is the cavalry. So one thing that I was expecting this battle for sure was to have the cavalry advantage, because I brought, I believe, 8 Scutari cavalry, and then I put the spearmen on my flanks. So basically every time I take a cavalry fight, I'm going to be able to back them up with a bunch of spears and be able to turn a cavalry fight in my favor. And I expected to have more cavalry than him anyway. But there are a couple problems with it. Like Prussian Prince said, one of the issues was that he brought Hastati out on the flanks, and suddenly if I engage my Scutari spearmen and try to kill some cavalry, then a bunch of Hastati are going to come in and kill the spear. So that suddenly makes things a lot more difficult. Another thing that was kind of difficult for me, and this game actually, I don't use the debug camera. I am kind of stubborn in that way, and I think that's one of the problems I have in Total War. I get really kind of used to something, and and it's the same in Dota as well, actually. I get my settings in a way that I like them, and then I never change them, even if there's something that's better. If you use debug camera, you simply have an advantage over an opponent who doesn't. You can literally put your camera directly above your army and see the entire field. In a 40-unit battle, I could not see my entire army. So every time I wanted to use my cavalry, I had to literally pan my camera all the way out to the flank, and then move my camera all the way over there and use the cavalry that way. So it takes me probably a second longer than Prussian Prince to do anything, and Prussian Prince is definitely going to exploit that, because he can, I don't know where your camera was positioned in this battle, but I assume it was directly above your army where you could see your entire army, and simply just
I could see both flanks.
Yeah, you could just simply flick your mouse to one side or the other and move your cavalry that way. So it's 100% my fault for not using the debug camera, because that's an option in the game that I just simply haven't taken advantage of. But it's going to make it really hard for me, because I have to literally pan my camera all the way to the flank to move my cavalry, and so I'm going to make some micro mistakes on the flanks here that I normally wouldn't have done, because on like a 11,700 talent battle, it's not a big deal. Like, you can see your whole army generally. Again, you're still going to have an advantage as a debug camera user, but I'm going to make some micro mistakes here that I really shouldn't have. But yeah, I thought that was definitely an interesting thing as well. So what is your tactic at the moment? I know we're kind of at a stalemate right now. We're just kind of figuring out how we're going to engage each other, but what did you want to do at this point of the battle?
Well, I just wanted to engage on one of the flanks, take like a cost-effective trade, but like as you see, I'm now pulling back on the left flank because I thought that maybe you were a little bit close to your infantry, so maybe it would have taken too long for me to kill your forces there.
Yeah.
So that's why I pulled back, but then I go forward again. Like, I'm trying to catch you out of position on the flanks, basically. Like, I'm not doing anything in the center because I see you have all those melee units, so I'm not trying to do anything there. And you're kind of surrounding me, so I'm gonna try and pull back. Although, slightly late. Like, yeah, I pulled my center a bit late. You could have exploited this, but you moved also a little bit late. With your forces on your
I think the story of at least the beginning of this battle was everything I did was a little late. I'm not used to 40-man unit or 40-unit armies, and neither are you. But again, yeah, that camera was definitely a part of the micro problem. So a huge mistake right here. Like, you kind of baited my right flank, and so I was focusing on micro over there.
Yeah.
And then I pulled my guys back on my left flank, but they didn't do what I thought they were doing. They kind of moved to the side, and their flank was left exposed, so you charged in and took advantage of that, and I didn't get a charge off of my Scutari cavalry at all. Now, auxiliary cav are still going to win that fight, but if I got in charge off, it would be a much more even fight at this moment. But instead, they don't get their charges off, and that's obviously a huge deal in a cavalry fight, so you're going to take a couple of my cavalry units off the field right away, and I'm going to notice that mistake and send some Iberian swordsmen and a couple other veteran shield warriors over to that flank and try to wrap up this side of the field. But again, you have the infantry advantage in this fight anyway, so even if I do manage to kill all these auxiliary cav and the Hastati over here, it's still going to be a very cost-effective trade for you, because cavalry is really the only way I can win handily an infantry engagement. Just running into your swords isn't going to do it for me. I have to have some kind of cavalry to hammer and anvil, and if you take out a bunch of my cavalry here and then lose a couple of Hastati, that's not a big deal for you at all.
Even then, even if you still have your cavalry, it's still be difficult.
Yeah, it's still hard, because as we were talking about it before this replay started, Armored Legionnaires they'll beat Scutari Cavalry one-on-one, so he could pull a couple of his Armored Legionnaires off the front line, put them in the back of his infantry engagement, and just kind of protect his cavalry. So even if I did get a bunch of 6 or 7 Scutari Cav in his rear, that doesn't mean that I'm going to win the infantry fight. Now, it would help, obviously, but it's still not necessarily going to win me the fight. And again, over here, I kind of took a bad cavalry fight. I was just not microing as well as I probably should have been, and so I pull out of here, notice a bunch of that.
0 kills.
Yeah.
You have 0 kills on those units.
Yeah.
Kind of
no, it's bad. It was bad. All right, but I managed to kill some of your auxiliary cav here, which is good, and I'm wrapping up some of your Hastati. And the interesting thing about this battle, and it's kind of cool about the 40 unit battles, is that you get to engage multiple times. Sometimes you'll just see people just commit all their troops at once, and it's just one big slugfest. But there were a couple stages to this battle, which I thought was really tactical and interesting. Like, you're going to engage 3 Hastati and I think 3 or 4 auxiliary cav over on this flank. And then I was like, okay, well, they're kind of isolated at this point, so I'm going to send a bunch of my swords and spears over here to try to tie them down and kill them. And I should be able to. Like, you don't really have support over here, but again, you got what you wanted out of this. You killed my cavalry, and that gets rid of a lot of my mobility, and that's really what you wanted. And Hastati are 350 talents, so that's not a big loss for you at all. Like, I probably already lost about as much in terms of funds as you have over on this flank, but you got what I needed. I needed my cavalry more than you did, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, it was still risky for me a little bit, because I went out so far.
Yeah.
All the way over there. Like, you were much closer with your unit to support. Whereas I was very far away. So if this somehow went bad for me, I couldn't do anything to change.
And I think it is ultimately going to go... I don't know if it was bad for you, again, because you got the trade you wanted, but you are going to end up losing all of these Hastati and all these cavalry, because simply they aren't going to be able to survive this fight. I think you're going to end up with like a half-strength cavalry unit running out of there alive, but the rest of these units are going to end up dying to the Iberian swords and melee. And you can see at the balance bar, it was even at the beginning, and it's already shifted a little bit in his favor. So definitely he has gotten the better of this first engagement, but I did manage to kill some of these units, so I guess that was good. And we just want to reset at this point. I was like, okay, I've wrapped up that flank. I kind of want to just pull away again and just kind of see how I can take this infantry engagement in the middle here. And I kind of, it was funny because we were playing, and I pulled into the forest and was like, yeah, I was like, I wonder if he's going to follow me in here. And then Prussian Prince in chat while we're playing is like, I'm not following you in there, dude. I was like, oh, okay. All right, then.
Yeah, like, not going to waste my volleys there.
Yeah, so yeah, he's going to not take that bait, and I'm just going to end up taking out the rest of these Hastati on the flank here, and then just reset the melee engagement, and then see what happens from there. Nice killing animation. Just slit his throat. Oh, there we go. Alright.
You do have a lot of depleted units over there.
I do.
Have these Scutari Spearmen in particular?
Well, I was never really super worried about the Scutari Spearmen. They're kind of just like a... If I manage to flank around with them and throw some jabs with them, that's nice. And if I get to use them in an anti-cav fight, that's nice. But they were never really the big part of my build. Obviously, it's a sword rush build, so sword rushing is the name of the game, and that's the same for both of us, to be honest. Levies in particular, though, again, they're crazy cost effective, but they do better against the Iberian tribes than probably any other faction in the game. Again, because like all my guys have 15 armor, 30 armor. Like most of them have less than 50 armor. So these jabs, I mean, jabs in general do a lot of damage to any unit, but Iberian swords in particular have no fun when they're playing against this many jab units.
I believe you're... No, I think I'm wrong, but I believe it's the Thracians that have 0% missile block chance. But
Oh,
I don't
really?
know how much block chance your guys have.
Probably not much.
Yeah,
They have one of the worst shield values in the game because they use the really tiny circular shield that doesn't cover much of their body at all.
Thracians have the worst.
Yeah.
0%.
Yeah.
And like the best ones are the Germanic youths or whatever, have like 65%.
Chance to
Or
block
the spear
missiles.
wall. Yeah, missile block chance.
That's yeah, and their shields are huge. Although I'm kind of surprised. What do you know what the Romans is? Because the Scudum has to be really high. Like that shield's huge. Okay.
50%.
Yeah.
But oh no, spear wall is 65% for the Webby. Like that's the best unit to use against missiles. But
Do they even use a different shield than some of the the Swordmasters or Berserkers? It looks like they have the same shield.
I think they have different types.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, so we ended up kind of resetting the engagement here, and I'm just thinking how I want to deal with this. And so on my left flank, I was kind of, again, Iberian Swords are very good Peltas units. They have not just fire at will, they can actually target enemy units with their javelins. So I wanted to move them up and do a little bit of skirmishing with the levies, but again, that's not necessarily going to be a cost-effective trade for me, because levies are 220 talents, or something really low, and mine are like 320. So again, it's not horrible, but I need my Iberian Swords to be alive to flank around your Armor Legionnaires. The only way I'm going to kill them in melee is if I get my front line engaged and then get a bunch of my swords around the flank and hit you from the rear. And that's going to be really hard because your line is stretched out so far, and because again my front line is going to have a really hard time holding up against Armor Legionnaires for very long in melee combat. So at this point I was very worried. I was like, this is not looking very good for me at the moment. A lot of my tools, like the cavalry that I wanted to have, were no longer there anymore because I did a terrible job microing them. So I was kind of just thinking about how I wanted to engage this, and ultimately I decided that pretty soon here, running into melee combat and trying to get as many swords as I can to flank around is really the only way I can do things. But what were you thinking at this point in the battle? Do you remember anything in particular?
Well, anything in particular. I thought this was the samurai battle. Because look at all these lines, like so huge. Like
Yeah, these armies
the
are
way I'm
massive.
reinforcing with
Yeah.
those hastati, they're like line infantry.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird because of the 40 unit size. Like I'm not used to this. But at this point, I was indeed I felt quite
Confident,
and, yeah, like because I thought I had control of this game by this point because you didn't really have, as you said, you didn't really have many tools left. I actually had the cavalry advantage at this point. I think.
You might have had the cavalry advantage at the beginning of the game, which again I did not. I didn't think it made very much sense to me. Like, and it's because of the levies. It just freed up so much money and so much like units to get the higher quality stuff. But yeah, as you said, auxiliary cav should beat Scutari cav one-on-one in melee. So I have to support them with spears to win, and I'm gonna do that. I have Scutari spears in here.
Yeah.
But then you back up with Hastati, and Scutari spears can't kill the Hastati. So it just becomes very interesting and hard for me, honestly, just kind of hard.
Yeah, and now I'm rotating my whole force towards that small engagement. It's gonna be like, we're all gonna keep sending in units to support that. This is how I feel that it's gonna go at this point.
So I felt like I had to back up my spears and cavalry over on the right flank with some of my other better sort of units. So veteran shield warriors will destroy Hastati. So I'm gonna reinforce some of the my spears over here with the veteran shield warriors. And one-on-one in melee here, these veteran shield warriors are gonna run in, get into melee combat with the Hastati. I should be able to wrap that up very quickly. They're just a much better sword unit than the Hastati are. But again, it's gonna be a cost-effective trade for me here. But you're actually backing up with some Armor Legionnaires into the flank of this veteran shield warrior. So we're gonna keep having to try to flank each other with units and keep trying to commit more and more swords into the melee engagement. And so like you flank me and then I flank you, and then we'll just see how that goes. But the problem right here, of course, is this massive line of Armor Legionnaires and Evocati Horde. I cannot really reasonably flank that. I could maybe turn the flank of the couple units on the side here, this Armor Legionnaire on that side and the Evocati Horde over here. So yeah, I can isolate one of those, but rolling your entire flank when your line is literally what, 12, 13, 14 units wide. It's going to be so hard.
I think the only way you could win this at this one is if you had like just one massive line without having any reserves. Just have more, have a wider formation than I do.
Yeah.
Because then I literally can't spread out wide enough, even with like 15 armored legionaries. It's not 15, it's like I mixed in some Evocades in there as well. So I didn't have the funds.
Oh, boo-hoo. You didn't have the funds to bring more armored legionaries. I feel so bad for you, Prussian.
I brought some Evocades instead.
Oh God, woe is me, Prussian, woe is me. Jesus, sorry. So yeah, the melee engagement has started. I've sent a bunch of my swords into melee combat. Kind of sent them to their death because they're really not going to beat them head-on-head in melee. So it's going to be on the flanks that this battle is decided. So I wanted to send a bunch of my Iberian swordsmen to do some skirmishing with the armed legionaries on this side, and I will be able to. Like, I should be able to do a decent amount of damage with the peltas on this flank. But the problem is that throwing jabs isn't a fast way to kill things. Like, it'd be easier to just run in and kill you quickly, but I can't really do that. So turning your flank on that side is going to be difficult as well.
Just look at your general though.
He's already dead.
I focused.
Yeah.
Fire with the levies.
Yeah, that was a really good move from you. I didn't actually realize that you were targeting with levies, but yeah, from the flank there, you had a bunch of levies that just tore him up, and I don't know how many kills the Lusitani. Yeah, 23 kills for Lusitani nobles. That wasn't. I don't know if there was a whole lot I could have done there to silence those levies. That would have been pretty hard. You just did a good job focus firing, but yeah, 1200 talent unit getting 25 kills, obviously not good at all. But I did notice a gap here, and so I was going to get some of these guys around and into the flank. And some of your guys are in yellow morale, and it's looking bad for me, but I was able to chase off some of your levies with the spears and then get a couple swords around the flank and into the rear of your swords. But
your center.
My center is collapsing. And so if there's nothing for me to hammer an anvil with, if the anvil's gone, the hammer doesn't do much. So my general died, and this is where the cost-effective build that I brought, a lot of the lower tier swords, is really going to hurt me because my general dies, and I only have 3 units with Encourage in my entire army. So, and one of them's already dead. My general's already dead. So at this point, I could tell mass routs about to occur. The Lusitani swordsmen only have 45 morale, and then everything started wavering after the gen died. And I was just like,
nobles,
there is nothing worse. On patch 15, mass rats occur very rarely. Because normally you're not going to bring that many low-tier swords. But I had to with the Lusitani build that I brought. I had to bring that many. I guess I could have done something like you did, like bringing a bunch of javelins to the fight and then bring some of the higher-tier swords. But I ended up choosing, because again, the Lusitani swordsmen double as peltas units. I brought a lot of those, and it just turned into a complete mass rout. So that one hurt. I was a little sad after that one. And yeah, if we look at the unit stats, 2 of my Lusitani nobles did nothing. Yeah, no, and I think what Game Reducer said about patch 15 is entirely true. Micro is still important. Like, even in that battle, you could see micro is important. I missed micro in my cavalry and got punished because of it. But, I mean, the biggest issue in Rome 2 right now, and I know some people like it, some people don't. I think parts of it are good, parts of it are bad. But meta, or like just macro builds are the most important thing. You can simply win a battle just by having the correct faction and correct army setup at the beginning of the battle. And I think that this was a case where, and of course I want to hear your thoughts on it as well, that I think Prussian just had a build that countered mine very well. And I think that the levies and the upgrading to the higher tier legions just simply made an infantry engagement much easier than it probably would have been normally.
Yeah, you just have to somehow be able to expect what your opponents bring in, which is not easy.
Well, I think sometimes it is. Like, I think with Lusitani, a sword rush was pretty obvious that it was coming.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the problems I had was that I had a very one-track mind in this battle, and I was like, oh, he has to bring Primarian army. Like, he has to. Bringing 40 units, you have to bring that. Like, there's no way he can afford that many armored legionnaires. There's no way. I was wrong. Like, and the levies are a great counter to the Lusitani as well, because the javelins do a lot of damage to low armored units. And just in general, I feel like Oh, I should have played better, simply. Like, the cavalry was terrible from me, but once I lost those, and I didn't get them into a flanking position, yeah, an infantry engagement was never going to go well for me, because I don't think there's any faction in the game that simply beats Rome head-on-head in a melee fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting to say the least. So yeah, macro build was very important. Is there anything else you want to say about that battle? Like anything in terms of tactics, strategy, macro play, micromanagement that you want to talk about?
I think that even if you microed much better, you probably still would have lost. Like, it would have been extremely difficult for you to actually win this battle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just...
Yeah, well, sorry, you keep going.
Like I said previously, and I'm gonna stress this again, like, just make one big line with like all your melee infantry units, just rush forward, and engage on the flanks first, and then see what you can do. Because you do have more sword units, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spears.
I'm sure I did,
so, yeah. That was one way you could do it. Because you had reserves, but you had like 2-3 lines at some point, like in the beginning especially, which... in this scenario, I don't think it's as good as having just one wide line.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. In like a normal battle, in a normal 20-unit army or so, like max 20 units, I think that or in a normal tournament in general, Parthia or Armenia, I think would have made this a much easier battle for me. And I would have brought those in this tournament because I knew he was going to be Rome. I would have brought like Parthia, just spammed cataphracts, and that counters Rome. Yeah, that counters Rome really hard. But on this tournament, 10 cavalry was the max. So yeah, I could have brought 10 cataphract units, but that would have meant that like for the rest of my army, on a 40-unit army, I don't feel like skirmishers are as good because there are more units to kill for them, and so I would have had to have brought like 15 archers or something ridiculous, and just kited you all around the map. And of course, the more units you bring, the harder it is to kite someone effectively, because the easier it is to make micro mistake. Oh, I think it's harder.
Not impossible.
No, it's not impossible, but it's harder. And then like a 20-unit army where you can devote more time to each unit and kiting effectively. So, yeah, max 10 cavalry units there. Cataphracts, I could have brought 10 of them, but I don't think it would have been as easy because the rest of my army would have been trash. If I could maybe bring 15 or 20 cataphracts, easy game. Because again, this game is a game of hard counters, and there are certain factions that simply hard counter each other. Yeah. Rome hard counters Lusitani if they're able to bring armored legionnaires. Parthia hard counters Rome if they're able to bring a lot of cataphracts. So again, the meta build and the macro builds.
I guess it depends.
Yeah.
If I spam Triarii, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know how effective a Triarii composition would be. I've never actually tried that. That would be interesting to find out. But
like against cav it might be good, but I doubt that you would have like strong infantry as Parthia.
Yeah, no, I'm sure not.
Yeah.
But that was the third time that correct me if I'm wrong. That was the third time we played in a tournament, correct? We played in Fishy's March Madness, and then we played Scannon Intel, and then we played this. So I think that's 3. Yeah. So.
Did we play in Fishy's? Like what
yeah, semifinals, dude.
Like,
I know you want to put it out of your mind because I beat you. Oh, get wrecked, bro.
What was it like?
What was like what? It was the Mori and it was the best of 3, Mori and Hojo, and it was in the semifinals of Fishy's March Madness tournament for Shogun 2.
Oh, you won that one, right?
Yeah, I did.
Against 3 of Arbor.
Yeah, and
right?
3 of Arbor in the finals. Yeah, so that was the first tournament we ever played each other. And then Scannon Intel, you kicked my ass, and in this you kicked my ass. So you're winning right now. So hopefully, well, I think we should play more just regular battle, just because I think that, well, I just want to kind of atone for my badness. But
definitely we could play more.
Yeah, we should play more. But then we should also, at some point, I'm sure we will run into each other in a tournament again, and hopefully I'll be able to not be as bad. That would be nice.
Well, it's just unfortunate situation for you.
Yeah, I guess. And you're a filthy, dirty Rome picker, so it's okay. I don't feel too bad about it. Because you're a dirty Armor Legionnaire spammer, and I hope you Well, actually, do you know who you're playing next in the tournament, for this tournament?
It's Deeplex or Legend of Total War next in the tournament.
And then, so winner of that. I assume they've already played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they haven't played yet.
Oh, really?
Actually. They're gonna play tomorrow.
Okay.
So, I believe, or the day after tomorrow. Like, they were supposed to play today, but Deeplex didn't show up. But I guess we should start ending the...
Yeah, we should.
because-
yeah, it's long, it's long. So I guess last thing to say is that, well, first off, good luck in the tournament. I believe that you have a pretty good shot of winning this one. The interesting thing about it was that Darren actually put both of us against each other in the first round because we're the two most experienced multiplayer players. I could go into a little bit of why I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do, but it was fine. Like, I understand why he didn't want to have us two meeting in the finals and beating everyone else along the way. So I kind of get that, but it means that he manipulated the bracket himself, which isn't my favorite thing in the world, but really not a big deal. It's a tournament for fun, so there was that. But overall, good luck in the tournament. I think that this was actually a really interesting battle tactically, gave a good perspective on macro play, and in general, I enjoyed casting with you. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Yeah, thank you for casting with me as well.
And we will talk to you all later.
Yeah, and do check out Milk and Cookies Total War.
And check out The Prussian Prince at youtube.com. See you guys later.
See ya.
Peace.